And now for something completely different. Some things are weird because they come from cultures that are so far removed from our own that they can seem alien at times. Some things are weird because they're designed to be weird. Then there's Monty Python, a franchise that, thanks to intention and the passage of time, has essentially become both of these things. Monty Python began in 1969, making it 50 years old this year. As part of the surrealist movement in a decade already known for being out there, Monty Python was weird even to a culture that now looks strange to ours. It's zany, it's offbeat, and most of it is still really funny even to this day. Naturally, it has maintained a fan base, and when the microcomputer boom happened in the 80s, it was only a matter of time before someone realised that some of Monty Python's fans now had home computers, so they could sell those fans some games. Well, one game. One weird game. Let's have a look at it. I first encountered the computer game of Monty Python's Flying Circus while walking around my local branch of Boots the Chemist in Durham, where I lived at the time. I can still vividly remember walking up the stairs of the shop to browse the computer games while my mum was buying something. The games were all right at the top of the stairs in those days, and when I walked up I was greeted with a display of a few shelves of the hot new titles for the Amstrad CPC and ZX Spectrum, the only computers that anyone seemed to have round our way. Off to the side of the Amstrad selection, and thus in direct view as you climbed the stairs, was a big box version of Monty Python's Flying Circus. I grabbed it immediately, I was a big Python fan at the time, and began reading the back. There was no description of the game on the box. I'm serious, there's nothing about the game on this box. All it had printed on there were a few screenshots and some quotes from reviews. But it was enough to make me want the game. Now, £10 was a lot of money for me back then because I wasn't well off, but I did have some money saved up, so I bought it and spent the remainder of the trip into town, plus the bus ride home, poring over the game's very impressive manual. This manual tells you almost nothing you need to know about the game. There are 3 pages near the middle of it that explains what you're supposed to be doing, but that's it. Nevertheless, it's a massive book. Something of this thickness is usually what you'd expect to see in a flight simulator or a complex war game, but almost none of it is relevant to this game. Instead, it's full of weird clips from various Monty Python books, a fake set of TV listings, a load of stills from the show, and strange doodles. If you're a fan of Monty Python, you need to read this manual. It's hilarious. I used to take it to school with me all the time so that my friends and I could have a laugh at it. It's that good. Anyway, enough about the manual, let's actually play the game. What are we doing here anyway? Well, we are Mr. Gumby, and a bunch of toughs have stolen his brain. They've cut it into 4 pieces, and they'll only give it back to him in exchange for some spam. You need to collect 16 tins of spam on each level, which you can then exchange for a piece of Mr. Gumby's brain. Collect all 4 pieces, which means there are only 4 levels in the game, and you've won. Collect too few pieces, and the game will show you a picture of a frog. On the CPC, the game is vibrant and it looks superb. It's a pleasure to play and I love it. I loved it back then and I love it now. It isn't the fastest moving version of the game by any stretch of the imagination, but it's great to play, it plays pretty smoothly, and fans of the CPC would be hard pressed to fault it. There is no music, however, only on the title screen, but the sound effects are decent enough while you're playing, and there's definitely enough to keep you going, even without any music. The game is wacky, everything looks brilliant, and the controls are pretty fluid too. I really like it. I can't fault the CPC version, it's definitely worth playing. Now let's take a look at the CPC's older stepbrother, the ZX Spectrum. The Spectrum version is basically the CPC version with fewer colours. It looks like the graphics are a straight monochrome version of the CPC's graphics, the level design is exactly the same, everything is a straight port. The Specky version runs slightly faster, as you might expect, but it is only slightly, so it's really a case of which computer you prefer to use if you want to play a version of Monty Python on your Z80. The Spectrum even has a lovely rendition of the Monty Python tune, the Liberty Bell. Well, I say it's lovely. It's lovely right up until the fart noise at the end of it. That really just doesn't work well on the Specky's bleeper. Still, you can't have everything, I suppose. Anyway, the Spectrum follows the same level progression as the Amstrad CPC version. You begin as Mr. Gumby, who has to navigate a load of falling weights, after which he falls into a pit and finds he's been turned into a fish. This is where the game starts properly. You need to navigate a series of tunnels in order to destroy blocks of cheese and collect tins of spam. Some of the tunnels will let you progress, some won't. Some of the tunnels contain side missions, where you'll find Mr. Gumby is turned into a bouncing boot with a head on it. You need to be able to successfully navigate these side missions, otherwise you won't be able to collect enough tins of spam. Get to the end of the level with 16 or more tins of spam, and you get a piece of Mr. Gumby's brain back. Fail and you just won't. It's a remarkably simple game in that respect. What's not simple is the amount of enemies that will be thrown at you. Some of them hang around on the screen until you've managed to kill them, others will simply float past in a set pattern. Others still will fly at you as if they are guided missiles. You'll need to quickly learn which enemies do what and what their attack patterns are if you're going to get through this game. It's not too hard, because once you can identify an enemy by sight, you know what it's going to do. They don't mix their patterns up, so that's pretty good. At the end of each level is a baddie with a set attack pattern. Learn it, avoid their shots and shoot them enough so that they explode. Job done. If you've got a Spectrum and you want to give Monty Python a try, you will not be disappointed. It really is a lovely game. I first encountered the PC version in secondary school, about 3 or 4 years after I'd first bought my CPC version. I loved the CPC version. I really didn't think any other version could beat it. I was wrong. The IBM PC version is the CPC version, but more so. It has wonderful graphics. The first time I'd seen a PC game look amazing, in fact. It has smooth controls and it moves at an incredible speed. This was gaming brilliance for the time, and it still looks good today. The PC version also has intermissions. Some of them are taken directly from the show, which is pretty cool, and others lean into the fact that this is a computer game. I was shocked at one point to be arbitrarily told that the game was over, only for the game to then apologise for ending prematurely. It gave me a cheap version of Breakout to play while it rectified the problem. Then we went back to playing Monty Python. It's little additions like this which really help the game feel like a Python product. I love it. Transitions between the locations are also animated now, with Mr. Gumby losing his brain at the start of the game and Fish Gumby being pushed around the level by big plates on hydraulics. The result of these animations is that you really feel like you're playing a Monty Python episode. But if you prefer the straight game as it was on the 8-bits, you can turn those animations off. So everyone's catered for here. I truly think the PC is the pinnacle of the versions that we've played so far, but it's not the final one that we have to have a look at today. I don't know how we're going to top it, but let's continue. Sadly, I couldn't get the Commodore 64 version of this game to work. It would load as far as the title screen and then crash. This screenshot from the Lemon 64 website makes it look like a faithful port of the game, however, so it's probably decent enough if you can get it to play. The music is surprisingly not great though. The title theme has too pronounced a bass beat for my liking, and the SID chip can definitely do much better. The Atari ST proved even more problematic than the C64 to get a copy of this game running. Sadly, I just couldn't get it to load at all, which is a real shame, because this screenshot from YouTuber Jim Plays Games' video of the game in action makes it look like a really nice version. It seems to play just like the PC version, albeit with some nicer sound. Anyway, let's move on to the final version. When it comes to 16-bit gaming for a computer, it's hard to top the Commodore Amiga. This machine feels like it was made for gaming. The sound quality of the system is top-notch, the graphics ability on the system is superb, it's a games machine that can do serious stuff as well if you wanted to. I love the Amiga, I always have. I never owned one back in the day, I went straight from the CPC to the PC, but my cousins and friends all had Amigas and they were brilliant machines. So I was expecting great things from this port of Monty Python, and I wasn't disappointed. The Amiga handles the game without a problem. It's basically the same as the PC version, right down to the muted colour scheme. I don't mind that, it plays just fine. The music is better on the Amiga, but it will get right on your nerves very quickly, so you might want to turn it off or at least turn it down while you're playing. As iconic as the Liberty Bell music is, the sequence used for the show's titles just isn't long enough to warrant being played on a loop for the entire game, which is exactly what happens here. The PC version was the same way, so don't take this as me knocking the Amiga, both versions are equally annoying. The Amiga version has the same interlude animations as the PC, but here the frequency of their interjections is toned down a bit. I don't know whether that's a good thing or not, it's just different. Personally, I don't mind, but then again I grew up playing the CPC version, which doesn't have any of the interludes at all, so for me it wasn't like I was bothered by their absence. You may have a different view, which is fine. Graphically, I can't fault the game. The characters and the enemies all look great, and it's clear what everything is, which is nice. I think the enemy fire is larger and easier to spot on this version, which is a definite improvement over the previous versions that we played, because it makes the game a little bit easier now that you can dodge the enemy fire more easily. So at the same time, it still maintains its difficulty level, because while on the 8-bit versions you could eventually clear all of the enemies off a screen if you just shot enough of them, on the Amiga version you don't seem to be able to do that, they just keep coming. But it all looks great, it all plays great, and it's still very enjoyable, so that's great. If you have an Amiga, this is definitely a game to track down and play. All in all, Monty Python's Flying Circus is one of those games that you just can't go wrong with. It doesn't seem to matter which version of the game that you get, or which computer is your favourite to game on, you're still going to have a great time with this one. Each version is fun to play, and each one seems tailored to get the best out of the machine that it's running on. I can't fault this game, it's brilliant fun, and although it is difficult in places, it has personality to it, and is worth persevering with. I love it, and I think you'll get a lot out of it too. And that's really all there is to it. Monty Python's Flying Circus is a brilliant game. It's a lot of fun, it's weird, yes, but it's easy to get to grips with, it's easy to work out what you're doing, and it's great fun. I can't recommend it highly enough. Regardless of which version you get, regardless of which computer is your favourite, it seems to have been tailored properly to each system, which means that it's a great game regardless of which version you pick up. So this really is one that I have no qualms with recommending regardless of the system you choose to try it on. So do give it a try. Anyway, that's really all I've got time for, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you did like this, and if you did, remember to click that like button, share it with your friends so that they'll know a good game when they see it, and do subscribe for future videos because there will be more in the future. But until next time, I've been Kirk-Robinson, you've been watching GameHammer Daily, and I'll see you next time. If you liked today's video, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you.